All of us are going to die. Someday. Right now, we are working towards our futures. We are not thinking about our final days. We don't want to dwell upon the fact that just as we are born dependent, we will likely die as such, in the loving arms of those that care for us. If we're lucky, at least. If we're lucky, we will meet our end a long time from now, surrounded by caring hands who help us do for us the things we could once do for ourselves. I want to ask you today how you want to face death, so that you will help be a part of the solution that is the dark side of caregiving, otherwise known as elder abuse, a fate that affects 1 in 10 seniors every year. My father's mom was vivacious and thriving until she suffered a stroke. When she was moved into a nursing home to be cared for, she became upset about her lack of independence. Her decline in health and mental state was obvious, but no matter what my family did, we were unable to improve her condition. Her nurses brushed it off as nothing more than the aging process. One day, she called my father and begged him to get her out of there. She had witnessed something horrible. In the hallway outside of her room, a friend of hers had slipped and fallen, laid on the ground for hours before being helped. She even described a nurse stepping over the woman, saying, "You're not on my service, and I'm not going to help you." This story was verified by my grandmother's roommate, but their case against the nurses never saw the light of day, because no one believes the old and senile. The National Council on Aging estimates that for every 1 case of elder abuse, 14 more go unreported. Similar to my Graham's situation, this is because oftentimes the witnesses are the elderly themselves, and their words stand very small compared to those of an able-minded young adult. There's a stigma here that I'd like to draw attention to. Ageism. When, because of your old age, you are suddenly deemed unable to make cognizant decisions and your wishes are disregarded. According to the best available estimates, between 1 and 2 million Americans aged 65 or older have been injured, exploited, or otherwise mistreated by someone whom they depended for care or protection. The neglect in this particular nursing home would later cause another injury, and this one would result in a death. The death of someone that I cared about. My grandmother, who was not supposed to be out of bed on her own, slipped in the hallway, hit her head, and this caused her to go into a coma before she passed away. In ancient times, the elderly were revered as the wisest and most valuable members of our society. Today, when family members are no longer able to care for their elderly, they are placed in care homes, where they are subject to high chances of abuse and neglect, in which the living conditions themselves are often below what the already low standard is. Just like technology, we have become entrapped in having the best and latest model. Whether it be our phones, our cars, or our clothing, we have created a society that relies on instant gratification and easy fixes to our problems. The creation of nursing homes, retirement homes, and other care homes were originally designed with good intentions and as an easy fix to the problem of our aging parents. While they still hold a positive mission statement, they rarely live up to those promises. When you Google search the term elderly, the first suggested search item is abuse. When you follow that very search, you get a Google definition of what that is, but only after about 4 different ads for law offices and attorneys to see if there's a case to be made. And for good reason. There's big money in elder abuse cases. One of the biggest names in senior living in the United States reached a $1 million settlement in February of 2016 for elder abuse and a wrongful death. Another $13 million lawsuit was reached a year prior for the same company. Recently, another lawsuit was filed against that same corporation because an 88-year-old dementia patient in Michigan walked out of an unlocked back door where she slipped and fell, could not gain re-entry, and froze to death outside overnight. These big-name corporations are known for spending millions of dollars covering up the abuse cases, so their potential customers won't know that they are truly failing at providing quality health care. So my question is, why is this corporation in business? And more importantly, why don't they stop putting the money into covering up the abuse and rather put that money into better care so the abuse can stop in the first place? A friend of mine who has been working in a nursing home for 5 years as a CNA and 3 years as a home health aide has described situations in which nursing home patients have developed serious bed sores from not being looked after properly. He then went on to say that if there was one thing that he could change about elder care, it would be that every person would have a personal caregiver. And this seems like a simple enough solution. However, there's a huge job shortage in this field. Claire Phillips, who worked as a nurse in a care home, said that working in a nursing home is seen as the job you get when you can't get a job in a hospital or you want an easier life. So it's no surprise that there's a lack of care in these homes. The jobs themselves are often grueling, pay little, and come with no benefits. In addition to these low rewards, the screening process itself is poor. The New York Times highlighted that the workforce that typically fills these positions, poorly educated, low income, usually minority women, will not see a big increase over the next 10 years. My mother's mom was the woman that I was named after. You could hear her laugh from another room, and she could entertain an entire group of people with one of her stories. She was my best friend. At 93, she was going strong. At the beginning of my sophomore year of high school, my mother and I moved in with her to help take care of her. Near the end of my junior year, I walked into the kitchen to find her unable to form words and her arms were slack. Now, for many of you out there, you are thinking that these are the classic signs of a stroke, and that's exactly what I thought. So I called 911. Lucky for us, it was only a urinary tract infection, also known as a UTI. UTIs are extremely common in the elderly. They are dangerous because they are so difficult to prevent. You avoid them by drinking plenty of water. However, when older people drink too much water, they suffer sodium deficiencies. So it's all about maintaining a balance that neither my mom nor I were aware of needed to be factored into her care. A balance that many trained nurses were not aware of either, because even in the care of the rehab facilities she began cycling through, she kept getting them. I began to be an expert in knowing when there was something wrong with my grandmother. I could tell the warning signs of a UTI days before anyone else, and I tried to warn her nurse once. I was brushed off as not knowing what I was talking about because I was only 16. Ageism. It is an ism that nearly killed my grandmother because a few days later, my mom got a phone call that she was en route to the hospital. She had had another episode, and a severe one. The culprit was another UTI. The same widely known senior living corporation with several lawsuits filed against it that I mentioned earlier was the same company that owned the nursing home that my grandmother stayed in. The same nursing home that brushed me off. The same nursing home that was so understaffed that when my mom pressed the emergency button in my grandmother's room, it took 13 minutes and 28 seconds for someone to show up. The same nursing home that I could hear other patients in rooms down the hall screaming, "You're hurting me." And it was when no matter what my mom or I did, that changes still could not be made. I realized how truly prevalent elderly abuse is, and that it's time for a change. Economic power being used to silence what is right can no longer be the norm. My grandmother, best friend, and namesake passed away on November 1st, 2015. And that is why I stand before you today, to educate and motivate, so together we can end that abuse. Right here in Oklahoma, cameras in 96-year-old Aretha Mayberry's room revealed caregivers pushing her head down and preventing her from breathing. These are not only distant people, but our family members. They are our best friends' parents, the ones that would put up with our late night sleepovers. They are our teachers, our role models, our neighbors, someone's husband, someone's best friend, someone's entire world. 91% of nursing homes lack the adequate staff to properly care for their patients. These people gave us the world that we live in today. Their sacrifices yesterday paved the way for our success today, and we would be nowhere without the legacy that they instilled in our culture and in our families. 95% of nursing home residents said they had been neglected or seen another resident neglected. They deserve the same unbiased respect that they gave to us, because the terrifying fact is that elders who experienced abuse had a 300% higher risk of death when compared to those who had not. These stories have gone unnoticed for too long. The small changes that we can begin to make start with changing the cultural mindset that growing old is a burden and allowing this abuse to simply slip by. Through this, we can make real waves and begin to change laws. As you transition into caring for your parents, start setting an example for everyone else. We need to learn now. Explore other possibilities. Get creative with care and what are standards of it. Because as we grow up, we will be the change that we are looking for. After all, it won't be long until we ourselves are elders. Thank you.